Yes, that is the Southern River Band, local lads out of Thornley. Great to have your company on the Shelter FootyCast live from the BackChat Studios. I am sitting in Will Schofield's comfy chair. My name's Mark Readings. But some things haven't changed too much because I try and dress with some degree of formality, respect for the occasion. But we've brought in a bloke that just follows in Scully's path, just shorts, just whatever you want to get out of bed in. Hamish Brayshaw, Hammer, good to have you here, brother.
Sweet, yep, thank you very much for having me. I haven't put on my my Sunday best. No, I'm rolling into work after this, so it's very casual attire for me. But you're looking very good. White socks? Grey socks.
Yeah, sort of grey socks, but let's not worry about what's on my legs, Hammer. With the fact that you are going off to a footy club, I'm going to a footy commission, so there's a slight difference there. So a slight difference. So, of course, if you're new to our podcast, our Shelter FootyCast, every Monday and Thursday we review the round that's been and gone. Well, at the moment it's all about Trade Week. West Australian theme, so Fremantle, West Coast, that's all covered. Socials at Shelter FootyCast. We've got FootyCast at shelterbrewing.com.au. I'm big on social media, hence I'm reading this with a fair degree of caution as shelterbrewing.com.au. Of course, it's our beer. They support us, the boys and girls down there in Busselton. YouTube, BackChat, Shelter FootyCast, you name it, we've got it. And of course, get down if you get a chance to. Have you been to the Shelter Brewery down in Busselton?
I have not, but I'm very much looking forward to it. I had a few last time I was on BackChat, and they were excellent.
They are excellent, and it's a really great space and great for lunch and dinner and obviously having a shelter or two. So you get involved in that. Let's jump into our big footy moments of the round or the weekend, as it turns out. And Trade Week has turned into Trade Week and a half, Hammer.
Yep.
How have you tracked all the comings and goings?
I find it very difficult to keep along with nowadays, that it's future picks and points and all the rest of it. But I just keep an eye out for some names that I'm sort of interested in. Pretty keen to see what happens with Brodie Grundy, Luke Jackson, obviously. Then the WA boys, so obviously Griffin Logan, all the Freo boys there's been the mass exodus there, and what happens with Lobb and how that all sits. It's interesting, but yeah, they're the ones that I'm looking out for.
And as a player, I can only imagine, look, we talk about it like it's just trading football cards, but there's careers, there's lives at stake in all this.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, from my point of view, when I was going through it wasn't so much that I was looking to get traded or anyone was looking to trade for me. It was more my list spot is determined by who they get in or who they don't get in or what picks they have in the draft. And at the end of my second year, it was, look, mate, we're not 100% sure what we're doing. We've got to wait for a few things to fall through. So you very much are up to the will of what happens in the trade period and who if they, in my case, they were going after Tim Kelly, and just so happens that there weren't many picks after that, so I got lucky and got to hang around on the list. And there's a few guys in my position this year who will be waiting with bated breath to see what big trades fall through. Yeah,
it's interesting, isn't it? Next couple of days will tell a lot. The Jason Horne-Francis trade, of course, trying to get from North to Port Adelaide. Where do you sit with him leaving after 1 year?
I don't think it should be allowed. I mean, you enter a national competition. I understand mental health and wanting to get home and all the rest of it, but I can't fathom that a screening process of a national combine for a national draft, those things flag pretty quickly, I would have thought. But a year in a national combine, that you sign the dotted line saying I'm there for at least 2 years, I think you got to see it out. But time will tell what happens there.
Yeah, Jason Horne-Francis. They started off North Melbourne, Port Adelaide, West Coast. The Giants jumped into a possible trade setup. We'll discuss that in just a moment, but the Jason Horne-Francis deal not done just yet. We're going to jump into our West Coast and Fremantle wrap now here on the Shelter FootyCast. Well, the Dockers have been more active than Freo, fair to be said. Josh Corbett, spoke to him the other day, by the way. I don't know if you know Josh at all, but gee, he speaks well and he's very polite, and he's already won himself some fans in the WA media the way he's conducted himself, which is a nice way to start your career in the West.
Yeah, it sure is. I mean, I think for the Freo fans anyway, they're pretty happy to get another Gold Coast bloke that, they got Will Brodie, and look what he's done to the footy club. So I think Josh Corbett can certainly add something to the team, and based on what the things that Brodie's done this year, I think they'll be really looking forward to getting another Gold Coast boy in there. Yeah,
the news with Corbett, he comes across here. Gold Coast in return receives a future 4th round selection, so that's locked away. Luke Jackson, it feels like it's imminent, the deal. It's probably a little convoluted, but he will get to Fremantle. That's almost a given. Just about where the numbers stack up for the clubs that are involved in this big trade.
Yeah, I mean, West Coast have still said they're looking to get him and they're in the mix, but I personally can't see him going anywhere but Freo. I read something yesterday about a 6-team trade, and there's all these things being thrown up. He's a quality player. I don't know he's worth as much as there's being told about him, but there's plenty of potential in there. So it'll be really interesting to see what they get for him and when that deal ends up going through. But I do think it's inevitable in the next couple of days.
What do you think he is? Because quite clearly there's debate as to, is he a ruckman? Is he a forward? Is he someone who could be a bit like Mark Blixavs at Geelong? Have you got an opinion?
Yeah, I think at the moment he's probably not tall or strong enough to be a number one ruck. I mean, he's had the luxury of playing under Max Gawn, and he will have the luxury of playing under Sean Darcy if they get him away at Freo. But I think he's got the potential, and without wanting to, go into hyperbole here, Dean Cox changed the game in terms of the ruckman being that fourth midfielder, and he's a guy that if you just look at that grand final, he was able to do things in the air and then attack the ball at ground level like not many other rucks could. So he's certainly got a potential, I think, to be a number one ruck that can basically just be a fourth midfielder. And if he was able to do that at Fremantle with the young guns that they've got inside, it's going to be a dangerous proposition going forward.
Absolutely. We think that'll happen in the next 24 to 48 hours. Of course, Wednesday is the deadline. What did you think when you heard Anthony McDonald-Tipungwuti could be making a comeback, and Fremantle also lurking as a possible destination for him? He is a talent, was a talent.
Yeah, I couldn't believe it. I mean, I forgot that he only retired in March this year, so it hasn't been all that long since he's been out of the game. But with everything that's happened in footy this year, I've almost forgotten about him. And the fact that his name just popped up out of nowhere, it was exciting. And I think the lurking around Freo, he would be a very, very scary fit in that forward line. But no, he's a talented player, and to see him back playing AFL footy would be really, really cool.
Be huge, wouldn't it? No, we talked about anxiety and not knowing where you're going to end up, and Brandon Matera in the paper today about the concerns he had about he was in tears prior to finding out whether a trade was being done. How stressed would Rory Lobb be at the minute? Just give his bought the beautiful little apartment slash townhouse in South Yarra, I think, or Toorak, and he could be a FIFO. And he's not sure what he's doing just yet.
No, well, it's interesting because in the same conversation was had last year. He said, I want out, and Freo played hardball and he stayed, and he's had as good a year as he could have possibly had, and now he wants out again, and there's talks of them playing hardball, but I think I can't see them giving him up for nothing, but they're going to get something good for him if they are going to get rid of him, but I think there'll be a lot of hardball to be played in the next 2 days, so I don't think he'll have much sleep until Wednesday morning. No,
well, Colin Young, of course, his manager, will be doing a lot of toing and froing. You're right, he had a really good season. Credit to him, because he could have mentally checked out, but he did have a deal which still covers another year.
Yeah.
So players have to understand, and now in the AFL, quite often contracts don't actually count for all that much. But when you've got such a long-term deal, that's why clubs like Fremantle, like Peter Bell and Simon Gullick are doing. They've got not the ace up their sleeve, but they've got some bargaining power here.
Well, absolutely. I mean, the alternative for Lobb is to just do what Cam McCarthy did and take a year out of footy, which at his age and the way he's playing his football, I don't think he would be wanting to do that. So, it is. Freo do have the ultimate bargaining tool, which is his contract that he's got for another year. But I think the fact that he's been pretty adamant he wants out another year at the club won't change that. So if they're going to get something done and want a little bit for him, it'll probably be now.
I think they'll get the job done somewhere, somehow. I just feel that now, with his value as it is, but mind you, off the back of that, Fremantle still has to find a replacement of sorts for him. We know that Matt Taberner has had some injuries over the journey. Looks like a talent in Jai Amos. They need to find that tool to come and try and play that role.
Yeah, they do. And I think they really would have liked Josh Tracy to have come on and taken that mantle already. He's had a couple of really good showings in the waffle, but probably hasn't taken that jump to AFL level just yet. So he's one that they're probably looking to get on. But I mean, Griffin Logue was down forward, and how he's gone, and they've got a lot of guys that have sort of stepped up and left. So he's gonna be a big hole to fill if he does get up and leave. So that's probably why they're so hesitant to get him out of there.
And that's why Josh Corbett ends up at the club. Speaking of the Gold Coast Suns, Jeremy Sharp, there's still a chance that the Dockers will pick him up, so that's in the mix, and also Lloyd Meek to Hawthorn. What do you think Lloyd Meek's value is, and what do you think, given Darcy, given Jackson, how important is it the Dockers keep Meek, or is he reading the tea leaves here and wondering whether he's going to get any game time at all next year?
Yeah, I think so. He's an excellent player. I mean, I feel like every game that he's played at waffle level this year, he's just been comfortably the best ruckman, and he's just in an unfortunate situation where he's playing under Sean Darcy as a best and fairest winner. So I think he's probably got the writing on the wall. They're looking to get Jackson in, and there's probably not going to be space for him. I certainly think he's worthy of a number one ruck spot or even a number two ruck spot at a lot of football clubs. So for him getting a chance to play AFL footy at a regular basis will be really good. I personally think he should explore his options, and I hope he lands somewhere where he can play consistent footy because he's a really good fella and deserves it.
Yeah, well, Ben McAvoy's departure, retirement, he's sort of, that's a huge call to say he's in the same mould, but he's that sort of big body, big sort of forward who's ruckman who can push forward a bit, but he's certainly a good citizen, and he's going to be chased by clubs like Hawthorn are looking for something else. Now, the West Coast Eagle, let's just push into your club and see.
Yeah, of course, why not?
It's been very quiet compared to what we're seeing and hearing at Fremantle. The junior Rioli thing is just hovering, but they must be doing something very quietly behind the scenes, West Coast.
Yeah, well, I mean, the Jaden Hunt one sort of got locked away early, and that was all but done. But he was over here and had coffee with Simo, and a lot of people sort of saw that coming. But I think the Junior Rioli one will unlock a few picks for us and will give us a bit more bargaining power going forward. But I think where the club's at the moment, they're probably looking more towards the draft. So in terms of trade period, I'm not sure if they're going to be looking for players or picks or what they're going to do. But the big one at the footy club is what they're going to do with their second pick, and whether they split that and try and get sort of two in the top 15 or 16, which I think I'm probably an advocate for. They've got some really good WA talent that they could probably get around that 6-7 mark that they might, if they want to take it to, no worries, but they'll probably still be there. So there's plenty of water to go under the bridge, but I think that's probably where they're looking to go, the picks and the draft, and really hit that one hard.
Now, Mitch Georgiades came over here post-season, obviously family here. Mm-hmm. Any sort of word as to whether that could possibly eventuate in terms of getting him across with Rioli going away? Dan Houston's also been thrown up as a possibility. Come on, give us something, Hammer. Tell us something.
Yeah, I heard there was a bit of traction around the Georgiades one early, which has fizzled out. I haven't. Houston was a rogue one that popped up for me the other week that I hadn't really heard about. But no, I have been trying my best to keep an eye on the footy club to see if anyone's rolling around for medicals, and all that stuff's done behind closed doors, and I'm at the other end of the building, so I haven't really seen a whole lot. But the Georgiades whispers were probably stronger than whispers early doors and have simmered down a little bit now, but we'll see what that happens.
If you were in charge of the football list management footy department, you've got pick 2, and so they end up with pick 2. What does your football club need in terms of positionally?
I think personally they need a young midfield mould that can be reliable and sustainable for a couple of hundred games, which is easier said than done. But I mean, playing at East Perth as a young kid that I quite fancy that I think can be like that, and Ruben Ginby is that sort of player. I mean, I relate him to Andy McGrath in my 18th year. He was probably not the most talented player in the draft. I think Tim Taranto was probably more X factor, and so was Hugh McCluggage. But you look what Andy's done now. He's probably going to be a captain of Essendon at some point, and he's played 100 plus games already. So he's going to get to that 200 plus, 250 plus, and be a captain of the footy club. And that's the sort of player that they had, pegged, and that's why they took him number 1, and that was a pretty safe bet. So I think that's probably what West Coast need now. They're in a position where you shouldn't be rolling the dice too much. It should be, if there's a safe bet there, I think they should take it, and that's what I reckon. And
a local boy, potentially, a Ruben Ginby, who, by the way, was one of 12 West Aussies who over the last few days did the draft combine in Melbourne, where they met clubs, they did some physicals. Darcy Jones, I don't know if you've seen much of this kid. He's got the helmet, he's a bit of a Caleb Daniel clone in the sense he's diminutive, but he's quick, and he's breaking records over at the combine. I think vertical, it's Stephen Hill's record.
Stephen Hill's agility record, flying.
How much notice, obviously, I'm presuming you went through the combine.
Yep.
How stressful, how much weight do you put on that as a young bloke trying to impress?
Well, I put a heap of weight on it, and then I actually put too much and broke my foot and didn't do a whole heap there. But there was, you're just sitting and watching all the guys go about it, and it's easy when you look in my year. I had a lot of mates that went sort of top 10. I think the Sandy Dragons had 5 of the first 11 drafted. So
give us a couple of names that came through in your draft.
Andy McGrath, Tim Taranto, Will Setterfield, Jack Scrimshaw, Ollie Florent. They were all in my 2016 premiership team. So that was a pretty handy side. And
what'd you win the GF by?
I think we only won it by 40 odd points, but Will Brodie.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe
Well, a
30
bit
points.
of fig jam coming out from
Will Brodie was in the. He played for the Bush Rangers. We beat him that day, but no, there was. So I was watching that draft combine, and it didn't really matter what a lot of my mates were running, but I remember there were guys who. I mean, Griffin Logue, I hadn't really heard of because I was not a WA boy, but he ran the 3K and sprinted the last 600 metres, and everyone was just sort of watching this kid bolt around with his big curly hair, and things like that just sort of stand out. And it might not be the difference between getting drafted or not for a lot of guys, but it certainly can push some guys up the ranks.
Yeah, it's a huge weekend, and we know that, as I said, with 12 West Aussies going across, they do the whole gamut of testing, some at Margaret Court Arena, and then some around the metro area in Melbourne, and the interviews with the clubs. And I know Ruben Jimby said he was asked, one of the questions was, name 5 dinner guests you like.
Yeah.
And he's a massive Fremantle supporter growing up, so he had Fyfey, of course, as his first, second, third guest, and outside of that, they get a surfer and someone else. But yeah, it's all in the mix, and we know that in about a month and a half from now, they're going to put themselves on the line. Hopefully they find themselves an AFL club. This is the Shelter FootyCast. Mark Readings and Hammer Brayshaw on this Monday. Right, let's check some of the other trades across the competition, or certainly the movements. What is it with the Water in Geelong? They just keep on attracting quality, Hammer. They've got Tanner Brewed from Greater Western Sydney, who receive a first-round pick, currently number 18. Geelong's getting the talent. The Giants are getting some pretty handy picks.
Well, I think if you look at the way Geelong have done it over the last decade, they don't really care too much about picks if they're going to get talent in. And obviously they're a fantastic club and have been good for a long time, so they just draw these good players in, and it's probably a handy position to be in for Chris Scott and Geelong. But they just keep bolstering their talent and getting good players.
And they've done a deal with Brisbane as well. Geelong receiving a second-round pick, currently number 25. Brisbane gets a second-round pick, currently 38. 2 third-round picks, currently 48 and 55. And bear in mind, I was a Maths 4 student at Trinity College, so all this means complete gobbledygook to me. A future second-round selection and a future fourth-round selection. Now, Hammer, you're in the footy business.
Yep.
How does Joe Blow out in the street follow this? It's complicated.
Oh, it is. I think once you start putting in the future picks and all the rest of it, it does get pretty difficult to follow on. In terms of who wins trades, when you're looking at that sort of stuff, you sort of have to wait and see. But I think when you look at future first rounds, future second rounds, and you're getting these late third and fourth round picks, it's few and far between that you do pick a diamond from the rough, but every now and again it happens. I mean, Dane Swan I think he went in the third round, Matthew Priddis went in the third round, Jeremy McGovern went rookie draft, so there's a lot of good players that you can pick up late, but it's that comes down to list management and where you go. But for someone who's watching this and following it on the AFL website, to see some player gets traded for this pick, and in the couple of years it's this pick, and then all of a sudden if they want to trade up, they need to use points. It's becoming very, very difficult to follow.
It is. What we can try and disseminate, though, is which clubs have probably had the best of the trade week so far. I mean, we mentioned Geelong. They just
keep winning. Yep.
Keep winning. Do you put, if Dunkley gets to Brisbane, hasn't happened yet, has it, the Dunkley deal?
I don't believe so, no.
But if that happens, that's a huge result for them, given they've got Will Ashcroft. I'm not sure if you've seen much of him, but
oh boy, yeah, he's a good player.
He's a starting player next year, isn't he, for the Lions?
I think he has to be. He reminds me a lot of Nick Dacos, what he was doing at the NAB League last year. But Ashcroft played a game of VFL when Brisbane were down there, and I think he had 30 and kicked a goal and was the best player on the ground as a 17, 18-year-old. So he's a special talent. So if they can get Dunkley and him, that's 2 injections straight into their midfield that is, that's only going to make them a better side. So they're going to certainly go well if they can lock that deal away. Yeah,
outside of that, I mean, North Melbourne, with the uncertainty over Alistair Clarkson, that's I mean, they've got Lowe, they've got Tucker, but I mean, in terms of star power, probably just a chance for more game time, particularly for Tucker and maybe Logue in the same boat. What about, there have been few clubs that haven't had a trade thus far, Adelaide, Essendon and Sydney. Any idea of, I mean, Sydney, for instance, grand finalists. Do you sit on the group you've got and just, obviously they've signed Tom Papley long term, but do you sit with the group they've got, or how aggressive do you think well, clearly not much at the moment.
Well, no, I don't think they were that far off it all year. I mean, they were one of the better sides, and they were able to play with intensity and real finals-like energy that probably just dropped away, and they burnt themselves out coming into the grand final. So I don't think they need to add a whole heap to their list if they want to get that next step. But if you look at the other sides, what have we got? Essendon, they haven't been overly active, but Adelaide, I think, are eyeing off Isaac Rankin if that deal can go away. Yep. So they've still got some time to get involved. But I think Sydney, if they really wanted to, they could look to attract some players. They're obviously a destination club at the moment, and the Sydney lifestyle, while it's expensive, it's not a bad place to live. But I think they're pretty happy with where I'd be happy with where they're at. Certainly.
Yeah, and Dan's just come up with some info that Isaac Rankin is going to Adelaide for pick number 5.
My goodness,
that's a high draft.
That was higher than what he was taking, wasn't it? Or
that's a massive massive win for the Gold Coast.
Yeah, absolutely.
In my mind.
Well, yeah, they were pretty disappointed to have him walk out, and I remember watching a video with Tuke Miller about when the leadership group sat him down and spoke to him about what they saw in the future, and for him to take that on board and then still decide to leave, to get pick 5 in return for him is not a bad effort.
Yeah, it's huge. Just quickly, before we go through some of the trades to keep an eye out for, is this going to change? Like, we talk about Geelong, the ability to attract players and a lot of them quality. The Giants and the Suns. Now, the Giants have lost a lot of players. They've got some draft picks. The Suns don't seem to be able to retain as long as they'd like. Is this just going to continue because of the go-home factor for players that want to head home to established footy states?
Well, I think it might do. I mean, even at GWS this year, Taranto's going to Richmond, and I think Jacob Hopper wants to leave. So there's plenty of good players that want out. But I think you have to look at it. They haven't been around for that long, and even the Gold Coast, you've got guys like Tuke Miller who have pretty much devoted the rest of their life there. He's going to be a star. I think Ben King signed a long-term deal up there. So there's plenty of good players who are happy to stick the course at the club, and they haven't been around for that long. So I don't think it'll take too much for them to be successful and sustainable. Probably success helps. I mean, Geelong, yes, they're a destination club because they're winning, but it's not like Geelong's I haven't spent a whole heap of time in Geelong.
Mate, let's be honest.
The lifestyle in the Gold Coast.
Scully's from Geelong. I've been there a few times. It's not a destination town.
The Gold Coast lifestyle. Yeah, the Gold Coast lifestyle certainly outweighs the Geelong lifestyle for a lot of people, I would have thought. So I think it'll come with a bit of success, and there are guys like Miller and like Ben King, and you even go to GWS, and there's a lot of guys there as well who have taken that step to pretty much commit for the rest of their footy career there, and it'll take a bit of time and a bit of success, but I think you'll get a few more of those guys. Yeah,
let's check some of the other trades that may or may not happen. Brodie Grundy's the big one because the Max Gawn combination with Grundy from Collingwood to Melbourne. Are you a supporter? Will and I have discussed this as to whether you need 2-star ruckman.
Well, it's interesting. I don't know that they do, but it certainly doesn't hurt. I mean, the only downside is if you play Gawn forward, his biggest weakness is his kicking for goal. So if he can fix that, then certainly
he's also the best ruckman in the competition.
Correct, he's the best ruckman in the competition, and I think there were too many times this year watching Melbourne, as I did quite intently, that he started out of the goal square, and whether that was a bid to give Jackson a bit more time and get him to stay, I'm not sure, but I don't think Gawn's a ruckman that you want to be having 50-50 of, and I don't think Brodie Grundy's a ruckman you want to be having 50-50 of either. So, I mean, if they can both agree that that's not the worst thing for them, then yeah, it'll be a really good duo. But it's certainly selling themselves short by only playing them half in the ruck if that's the way they're going to go about it.
Yeah, that's going to be an interesting one, how that plays out. We've mentioned Dunkley up to Brisbane. That still hasn't been completed. Jack Bowes or Bowes. Is it Bowes or Bowes?
Bowes, I think.
I think we'll go with Bowes.
He was picked 10 in my...
Geez, you had a lot of good footballers around you.
Yeah, well, I missed that draft, so that was why. There was too many good footballers. But yeah, he went pick 10, and I think the Gold Coast just probably had too much money that they didn't have enough players for, so that's what's holding his deal back, unfortunately.
Ollie Henry, again, he wants to go to the Cats, and I think I recall him playing as a Medi sub, I think, here against the Dockers this year. Wet day, Fremantle got towelled up. He came on the ground and was terrific.
Yeah, no, he's a fantastic player, that young kid. How old is he now? This is only his first or second year in the comp.
He's very new to it, yep.
Yeah, no, he's a star. 20 years old. There you go. My goodness.
20 years of age, and he's off to. I mean, the Cats just. I mean, the Cats just keep going from strength to strength. Tom Mitchell's an interesting discussion point because a Brownlow medalist. There's been whispers 12 months ago that either Hawthorn were trying to offload him, and now there's a bit of talk that he wants to get to Collingwood. Where do you sit on Tom Mitchell? I mean, he gets a footy.
Yep, absolutely. I mean, I think you do need players that can accumulate the ball, and he probably in the last year or two hasn't been as damaging as he was with it when he won the Brownlow, and I think he's a little bit of the Russell Westbrooks about him. Just sheer weight of numbers got him to a position.
Russell Westbrook, we're just rolling some NBA through it.
Well, there you go. He won the MVP off the first triple-double average season, so that was almost the same as Mitchell. He was just getting such a weight of possessions that you couldn't look anywhere else but him, and he was doing enough good things with it. But I still think he's a really quality player and would add to any midfield. And yeah, you do need someone who can find the footy the way he does. And I think with a stable team around him, he can certainly be a lot of help to Collingwood. Yeah,
interesting to see. And you're right, with some young players around him at Collingwood, gee, they could be formidable. Dan McStay, of course, getting to the club. So Magpies, the window very much open for them. Fiorini also to Collingwood. So that's they're building that depth. And I'll tell you what, they've done a great job. Craig McRae, 1 year in, prelim final, a breath away from making a grand final.
Well, everyone pegged them as sort of bottom 3, bottom 4 this year, and out of the gate they just went bananas. And yeah, they had a stretch where they won a lot of really, really close games. But having played football a long time, you know that the good teams win those close games. So it's not luck that gets you over the line. What was it, 10 in a row or something that they won by pretty close margins. So it's he's certainly done a wonderful job with that footy club, and the trades they're getting in at the moment, they're just keeping on getting better. A couple
of players going to the Giants, despite all the departure lounge talk we've been going through. Bedford and Soldo to the Giants. And Bedford, I saw a bit of him for Melbourne. He's a talent, we know that. So and Soldo can play back and does a bit of pinch hitting ruck work occasionally, but he's more a defender.
Yeah, I think for Bedford it's a bit of opportunity. It was a pretty tough team to crack into, and then Soldo as well. I think he's a dual premiership player. Has he won 2 of them?
Yeah, what? Don't ask complicated questions to me, Hammer, because at the end of the day, Scully and I don't worry about the.
Fair enough.
We just go with their good players.
Well, let's just roll with it. He's a dual premiership.
He's a premiership player.
He's a premiership player at least.
We know he's a premiership player.
And no, he'll certainly add something to the footy club, whether it's down back or in the ruck. And I think just being a big, strong presence certainly helps any footy club.
Absolutely, yeah. So one
just
premiership.
There you go. That's what I thought.
Just call him a premiership player, Hammer. That's all we have to worry about. Just the premiership player. We jump into that. We've talked about the combine, talked about trade week. So there's a bit to go there. Just quickly, AFLW with the Dockers and the Eagles. You're both having the Dockers, I guess, more expectations, but you got rolled, of course, off the back of the Derby. They got hold of you by a couple of points.
Yep.
And you got beaten by Richmond. You have improved, though, the Eagles, haven't you?
Yeah, we certainly have. I mean, we've won 2 games and lost 5 this year, and 2 games for us is as many as we've won in a season. So we're certainly on the up. But we lost to Fremantle by 3 points. The next week we lost to Hawthorn by 3 points. So we could have easily won 4 games this year, which would have been a massive leap for us. But we've got a lot of young players in. I think we had 13 or 14 turnovers list spots this year, which in a list of 30 isn't a whole heap. We've got a few of our more talented players on our long-term injury list. So we've had 2 ACLs, and we've had Evie Gooch has had her wrist operated on, so she can't play all year. So there's certainly been some ups and downs for us this season, but the way we've, I think, been able to develop these young players that we've got, Charlie Thomas, Ella Roberts, we've got a couple of young girls in from the Waffle. Michaela Weston's played every game, and she's really come on strong. So there's plenty of upside and plenty of potential in our group, and the wins are few and far between at the moment, but the process and what we're building is certainly coming along. So it's exciting times, I think, for the footy club.
I got just a message during about 24 hours ago from someone at the Eagles. They said, look, another loss to our AFLW team. He said that the midfield, not enough happening through the midfield, and what's the coaching department doing in the midfield just to find ways to get a result? Yeah,
well, I mean, it's interesting. The midfield's copping criticism when that's where the prime movers have been in the last 7 rounds. Skeet, I think it's no, we probably got beaten on the weekend in there by a pretty good side. Monconti's a fantastic player. I think she's probably going to go pretty close to winning the AFLW Best and Fairest Award this year. So we were up against it on the weekend, but we still had some pretty good performances. I mean, Emma Swanson's our captain, and she's been fantastic all year, and Bella Lewis has taken her footy to another level. So we're trying a few things in there that's for sure.
No, I love it, Hammer. Just throw the bait out there to see if you bite, and just got not much coming back. Given the, of course, as your introduction to the Shelter FootyCast, we have a Shelter XPA X Factor player, and now the Dockers were beaten at the weekend. They led, I think, by 9 points at three-quarter time, got overrun, which has been a bit of an issue for them in a few games this year, but we still found, and I'm happy for you to reveal our Shelter XPA X Factor player for this weekend.
Fremantle's Kiara Bowers, a losing game to Adelaide. She's gone out and had 29 touches, 21 of those kicks, but she's had 19 tackles.
19?
Yep, she is an absolute animal in there. I think she averages like 15 or 16 for the year or something. She's just an absolute weapon inside. So it's when she tackles you, it sticks.
The AFL record is 20, so she is an absolute gun. End of the day, though, I mean, like Fremantle, it's been disappointing. I know you're across the town from them, but for them, they've lost a few players, and in this expanded competition of the AFLW, I would have thought it's relatively difficult to recruit from outside WA.
Very, very difficult, yeah. So the way it works at the moment, because it's not a full-time caper, it's hard to get interstate players to come in. So they have lost a few to those expansion sides, which did hurt them. But I think they've still got a pretty good core. They've played some pretty good sides this year. Adelaide are, I think top of the ladder or second top. So they've played some pretty good sides, which is probably why they haven't been as successful as they would have liked. They've lost a few close games. They've had a draw. So for us, it's been pretty good to watch them. Not been playing too well, but I don't think they're that far off it compared to where they have been in previous years. I think they're still right around the mark as a really, really good side. Yeah, exactly.
By the way, if you want to email us, footycast@shelterbrewing.com.au. We're also on Instagram, I believe, Dan. I do. I am on Instagram, and some of my posts are on there, and people say, gee, was that you? And I got no idea what they're talking about. My daughter actually handles my Instagram account. Have you got anyone handling your Instagram account?
Just me.
Just you? Just me. Are you prolific? Are you like Scully and engage?
I'm probably not as engaged as Scully. I have been in the last few months sort of throwing a few jokes on there and getting a little laugh out of a few people. But no, it's Scully's been on there more often than anyone I've probably following.
He loves it like a bit like Goss. He enjoys that sort of, particularly if there's someone ready to have a.
He loves a back and forth, doesn't he, Scully? More than anyone. He's very, very active on the socials.
He's having a little breather as we speak and just enjoying the life down near the Shelter Brewery part of the world, and he's left Dan here with his wild pit bull to try and contain him for the rest of the week. So hopefully Dan and Pitbull go okay. Hammer, always good to catch up with you. I'm sure we'll hear and see more of you on the Shelter FootyCast. Good luck with the West Coast Eagles AFLW. Of course, Trade Week still rolling on Thursday. I won't be here. I'm going to be flying out just to another destination, just see if I can get a Jetstar flight to Bali and one back. Yeah, it's beautiful until it's delayed for 4 days. So we'll wait and see Hammer.
So you don't get a flight back there and you're stuck in Bali.
Exactly. So we'll play that out and see what happens. But thanks for your company. Thanks to Dan. Thanks to Hammer. See you next time on the Shelter FootyCast.